Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to a special edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch. Today we're going to talk about Aether Revolt singles in particular. Now, we did a video last Monday actually, where we talked about Aether Revolt singles for the first time, and we looked at some of the hottest cards, basically what they're worth, what the top 14 cards in the set were valued at the time last Monday. This week we're going to do more of a traditional Market Watch, where we look at the hot cards and the cold cards, what's gone up, what's gone down. Having said that, we got a lot to talk about, but quickly, if you check out the description below, you'll see a link to our Amazon affiliate store. If you make any purchases through any of those links, a small percentage will come back to help the channel. It's always appreciated. All the cards we talk about today will be found on there under the standard singles tab. You can look up any of these cards on Amazon, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff, including Aether Revolt sealed products. Also, you'll see a link to our Patreon page, another great way to support us and help us keep doing what we're doing. And I have a big announcement I'm kind of excited about. Hopefully, fingers crossed, later in the week, I'm trying to get a free gift together for the patrons who have been supporting us on Patreon. So stay tuned for that. I'm very excited. But having said all that, let's get into the Market Watch for this week. And we'll start off with the top 5 Aether Revolt cards that have lost value this week. Coming in number 5 is Baral, Chief of Compliance, down $1.22 to $2.90. This is actually a good card, but it's having a hard time getting a foothold right now in Standard. The main problem with the card is Standard just seems a little too quick for it at this point, and it's a fantastic card if you want to set up future turns. So I'm already thinking about like great things I can do in my Commander deck with this card, for example. But what's a little awkward right now in Standard is the control decks. They want to have counter magic. They want to have their win condition. They don't want to put their shields down for a turn to put this out, even if it means that they could be more successful in later turns. It's just too much of a risk because you have these combo decks that could go off just out of nowhere, right? So this becomes a little slow. Also, the other decks that are using a lot of control are actually those combo decks. They're trying to protect the combo, and again, they just don't have room for this. They have their combo, they have some other alternative win conditions like burn sometimes and things like that, and they have their counter magic to back it up. They're just basically out of spots. Coming in number 4 is Ajani Unyielding, down $1.23 to $8.48. Now, here's the thing with this card. I think it came out of the pre-release season maybe a little overvalued, which is normal for Planeswalkers. That's going to happen. But I do think it's doing as good as a card like this can possibly do in Standard right now. It's a 6 casting cost Planeswalker. It's 2 on color. So right off the bat, you know that this isn't going to be a 4 of in decks. And it's only going to fit into certain decks that can support the colors that it's in, right? And we're seeing that. It's actually a great card in the Selesnya tokens decks. I mean, usually seeing 2 of those, whether it's in the main deck or out of the sideboard. And this has also showed up in the 4-color Saheeli deck, sometimes as a 1-of from time to time. So this card's doing really well. Having said that, though, you do have to kind of adjust your expectations. A Planeswalker that's going to show up as a 2-of in certain decks and a 1-of in some other decks isn't going to be a $10, $20 Planeswalker, right? This is a card that's probably going to settle in around the $6, $7 mark, and I think it's going to be fine there, maybe even a little lower than that over time. But unless it starts showing up in a whole bunch of other decks, which I don't think it will at this time, again, because of the color consideration, it's going to continue to go down a little bit. Coming in at number 3 is Tezzeret the Schemer, down $1.30 to $11.50. So here's another Planeswalker, probably overvalued, coming out of the pre-release, and this one hasn't quite taken hold yet. Not to say that it won't, because here's the deal. The power levels here for this card costs 4. It does a lot of really good things, has high loyalty for what you're paying. This card is definitely seeing Standard play, no doubt. And I do think some folks are trying to work it into some different builds, maybe with mechanized production, for example. That could be a possibility down the road as people get a chance to wrap their head around that a little bit. The big thing holding this card back right now, though, again, I think is the speed of the format a little bit when it comes to these combo decks, that you don't have the time to take a turn off and build as much as maybe you would like. And a card like this really contributes to taking a little time off and building. But the advantage this card does have is the high loyalty count is going to take some pressure off you and put pressure on Tezzeret, at least for the time being in some cases. But you know what? Unfortunately, the combo decks just don't care about that, because if they can go off with their combo and you can't stop them, it's game over. It doesn't matter how many Planeswalkers you have on the battlefield. So that's going to hurt a card like this a little bit with the current meta. But we do have to start asking ourselves the question, what is the meta going to look like 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks down the road, and it could be different. Right now, I mean, after 2 weeks, those combo decks are looking pretty strong. If they have a really, really strong showing at the Pro Tour, we could be looking 5 weeks later at some bannings, and then all of a sudden different decks could become viable, and all of a sudden cards like this start showing up more and more. So here's the deal with Tezzeret long term. Keep an eye on this card. It's going to go down, I think, at least over the next few weeks, unless somebody comes out with something awesome with it at the Pro Tour. Then, of course, then it will go up, at least temporarily. But I think it will go down, and I think you'll be able to pick these up for well under $10 within a few weeks, hopefully. And at that point, I would pick them up, because I do think something's going to happen at some point where this card will become more relevant. And maybe it's just when Amonkhet comes out and there's more of a focus on Bolas and Tezzeret, they may have better support cards for something like this. So just something to keep an eye on long term for sure. Coming in at number 2 is Herald of Anguish, down $217 to $8.99. Now, I said last week that this was really just felt overpriced, and yes, it was. It's down $217 now, which feels slightly better. But again, here's another card that fits in a certain type of deck. I think you want to play this in an artifact-heavy, improvised style deck. However, that deck just seems a little slow right now for the meta, and because of that, this card hasn't really had its chance to grab a foothold. Again, that could change down the road. So again, this is much like Tezzeret. I would say keep an eye on the card, let it drop a little lower. This one could drop down to maybe even $2, $3 again, assuming nothing crazy happens with it at the Pro Tour. And when you can pick up copies of it cheap, pick up copies cheap, because I do think it has long-term potential. And coming in at number 1 is Heart of Kiran, and this is down $277 to $16.34. This was kind of like the big breakout card last week, and it actually saw significantly less play this week in week 2, which surprised me a little bit because it looked good in week 1. But it seems like some decks are maybe getting a little more streamlined, and they're looking for different types of threats. So, yes, this did come down a little this week. It did still see play, don't get me wrong, it was still out there, but just a whole lot less than we saw the initial week. I kind of expect this to rebound a little bit, maybe within the next few weeks, definitely with the Pro Tour, and it gets maybe some camera time. So keep an eye on this one. It is a mythic rare, so it is a little better at holding value than some of the other cards. But if it doesn't start to kind of rebound, it could continue to decline. So this is one to keep an eye on. All right, let's move into the cards that have gained value this week. Coming in at number 5 is Disallow, up 28 cents to $5. Here's a card that I think was maybe undervalued coming out of the pre-release. And I think partially it's because folks were a little shaky on how good control would be, and a little shaky on a 3-mana counterspell, but doesn't take folks a lot of time to figure out that, you know what, if you take Cancel and you staple a free Stifle possibility to it, that's actually a good card. So, you know what? Control decks are good. They're doing quite well. They were great in week 1. They did fall off slightly maybe in week 2. However, it doesn't matter because basically the combo decks are control decks too. So they're all running Disallow as well. So this card is going to continue to see a lot of play going forward. It will keep going up. $5 is pretty affordable, I think, for this card right now. Coming in number 4 is Winding Constrictor, up 30 cents to $1.05. This card's seeing a lot of play in these Golgari decks, and like I said before, there's a couple different kinds. You have a Delirium style, you also have an aggro style. This one works in both of them. It's also a great card for just casual Magic as well as Commander, so a lot of players are looking to pick this up. Now, it is an uncommon, and here's the thing you want to note. Uncommons, even though this did go up 30 cents this week, there's going to be a million of them out there. So it's not going to take long for this card to start going down and be probably under $1 and so on pretty soon. And that's just kind of the nature of the economics of it. But I will say, just as a side note, kind of tangent, this set has some incredible uncommons in it. And overall, I think long term, that's going to boost the desirability a little bit of sealed product for this set. Whenever you have a sealed set that has a lot of good uncommons and even commons that could convert to foils, it does help with the value of sealed product long term. So as much as I usually say I wouldn't hang on to new Magic sealed product due to the fact that there's lots of it out there, especially nowadays with inventions and all that, this set is the least intriguing to me. So just a little side note there. Of course, everyone's thinking about Fatal Push as being one of those key uncommons. And you won't see it on the list today because it didn't move much. It went down 11 cents to $5. But that says a lot that it's an uncommon that lots are being opened. But at the same time, it's not going down a whole lot. Also, I want to mention too, there's a lot of talk out there about Fatal Push and maybe some other uncommons not necessarily showing up as frequently as you would expect from an uncommon. That is not unusual. That is something that Wizards does. It's actually no secret. They talk about it. If you have, for example, 101 uncommons in a set and you have a printing sheet of 100 cards, one uncommon is going to move on to another printing sheet. You're looking at not a huge change. I mean, it's probably a percentage of 10-15% less than you would normally see of the just typical uncommons. But you do start to feel it a little bit. Now, it's also something that is perspective based too, because for me, for example, I opened a bunch of packs for the channel. Some of them I've posted already, some I'm going to post this week. But I will tell you, I opened a lot of Fatal Pushes. But that's just me. It's a small sample size. Other people are definitely having a hard time. I will tell you, Tezzeret's Touch, for me, incredibly rare. Out of all the packs I opened, which was quite a few, I think I only got 3 in the end. So sometimes you just get weird statistical anomalies. But yes, there is a kind of bigger process to it. And yeah, I'm pretty confident that Fatal Push is probably a little harder to find than the other uncommons in the set. And that will maybe affect price a little bit. But in the long term, there's still going to be a lot of copies out there. All right, moving on to number 3 is Glint Sleeve Siphoner. This is up 35 cents to $1.88. I'm actually glad to see this card doing well. This is shown up in the Golgari aggro decks. And when I saw this originally previewed, I kind of said, you know what? These type of cards always seem like they're going to be great, and they always fall short. However, this one has Menace, so I think it could do well because it's kind of pulling double duty. It's doing everything a aggro card should do. It's aggro. It's a 2 casting cost 2/1 with Menace. Oh, but also when you start to run out of gas, it has the ability to restock your hand. Perfect for aggro decks. At the time, I thought maybe it'd be a Rakdos deck. Ended up turning into a Golgari deck, but you know what? It's awesome. I'm glad to see this seeing play in Standard. Coming in at number 2 is Rishkar Pima Renegade, up 69 cents to $6.29. Another card I felt like was undervalued coming out of the pre-release season, and it is seeing play. Again, this isn't a 4 of due to its legendary status, but you see 2 or 3 copies of these, and they're fitting nicely in a few different places, which do include some of these strong Golgari decks, like the Delirium deck as well as the aggro deck. And finally, coming in at number 1, Walking Ballista, up 94 cents to $12.01. So again, the big darling of last week is the big darling of this week in a lot of ways. So a couple things about this card. First off, it is a rare. And it surprises me maybe a little bit that it went up almost $1 this week as opposed to staying stable or going down a little bit, considering the fact that more packs have been opened over the course of the week. But here's the deal with this card. I think this was a card that was underappreciated out of the pre-release season. And because of that, it left people kind of scrambling a little bit to pick these up over the course of last week. And I think that's why you're seeing a price increase here. But keep in mind, it's a rare. Lots of packs are going to continue to be open. And even though this is seeing a lot of play, and it's going to continue to see a lot of play because it's an awesome card. It's going to be great in Standard for some time to come. But keep this in mind. Smuggler's Copter was a rare. That was basically a 4 of in every single deck in Standard. And by the time you got to the point where it was banned, it was about an $8-9 card. So no matter how much a rare sees play in Standard in this day and age with the printings that we're seeing of these cards, your best case scenario is an $8-9 card. So this will settle in probably around $6-7 before we know it, quite honestly. But we are going to have to get through the Pro Tour, and there's going to be a lot of hype around this card, definitely around Pro Tour weekend, and it will probably spike again. But trust me, if you can hold out on this one, wait a few weeks, this card will start coming down in value. You can get it much cheaper than $12 or whatever it will be after the Pro Tour, probably. But if you need it for a deck next weekend, well, I guess you're kind of out of luck. You're probably going to bite the bullet and spend what it is to pick these up. So having said that, that's the market watch for this week for Aether Revolt. I'm going to continue to monitor the prices. If at some point they feel stable, I'll start to work them into the regular Saturday edition of the market watch. but if they still feel like they're doing weird things, I'll probably continue to do this side segment. And then in the future, once we move out of Aether Revolt, I do want to use this other segment to focus on other things. Maybe talk about some sealed product or talk about Commander, a whole bunch of other topics I like to talk about when it comes to the card value piece. So having said that, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks as always for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.